As we move forward a little bit, just want to go back to the segment we've been doing every week after these games. Question marks and exclamation points from week 3. Just a couple of things that we were excited about, and then something that we still have questions about still. Owen, I'll let you start this one off here. But what was something that got you excited that you saw from this game against Northwestern on Saturday?
Yeah, man, I've been doing a little bit of research into D.R. Hill Jr. and Jordan Davison, and I'm really excited what they look like as a tandem. We talked about this on Saturday, but when those two guys are in the backfield together, just because Hill is so fast and Davison is so much of just a wrecking ball, you really have to account for both. You got to have guys on the outside who can go get Hill, but you also got to kind of stack the middle and not let Davison go up the middle. And what happens is you can't do both. And Oregon will just pick whichever option works. We've seen it with Davison on the goal line. We've seen it with Hill for his touchdown against Northwestern. I'm really fired up about what these guys can do for this offense. Even if they're not the number one option, they raise the ceiling of this running back room by so much.
We've heard that the Thunder and Lightning nickname given to them already, and they look like a future, problem as a duo in that backfield, just because they do complement each other so well, like you said, and then you can use them on. I really like the amount that they've used the two of them together in some 21 personnel sets. That was the one that set up D.R. Hill's big touchdown in this past game against Northwestern. They run like a counter play with Davison as a lead blocker getting outside, and he makes a good block. I was really impressed by his blocking across that game. Kind of stepped into the role that Jaden Lamar had been playing, where he was the guy on 21 personnel sets and would be used as a blocker. Davison did a lot of that against Northwestern and did it really well. Just one stat that I found on each of those guys when I was doing some stuff. Hill, I put my my filter at 10 carries this season because Hill's got 11, Davison's got 13, but Hill highest rate of explosive, like 10+ yard rate gains on those carries in the country, over 50%. He on that explosive rate, and then Davison, only player in the country taking every single one of his carries for a first down or a touchdown. We've seen them use him in the goal line, and he's 13 for 13 on those opportunities, 8 first downs and 5 touchdowns on his 13 carries. Only player that's over 80% even on that rate. That he's just doing exactly what he's asked to do. So,
yeah, I mean, and going back, listen to what running back coach Rashad Sample said in the offseason. He was just like, these guys are film junkies. They're aged beyond their years. That's why they trust these guys so much.
Exactly. That's why they're getting on the field as true freshmen.
They're not, for what it's worth, they're not freshmen, really. They're not really first-year players.
Yeah. All right. So as we get into first thing that, for me, excited from this past Northwestern game, Dante Moore, just what he was able to do. This was the thing that I was looking for him to do coming into this game. Operate behind the sticks, and he did it really well in this game. We saw on that first drive they get a 3rd and 9. He ends up checking it down after some pressure comes in. But other than that, he did really good on some of these 2nd and long, 3rd and long opportunities that the Ducks really weren't getting in these first couple of games because they were picking up consistent chunks on the ground. We had to see Dante. He early in that game, scramble drill on 2nd and 10. He hits DeCorian Moore coming across on a dig. And then late in the half, has a 20-yard pass to Corian Moore on 3rd and 10, and then a 20-yard pass to Malik Benson on 3rd and 8. Both of those picking up big conversions late in that half on that touchdown drive in the 4-minute drill. And then the one we saw in the second half to Malik Benson, one of the best throws I've seen from an Oregon quarterback recently. On a bootleg out to his right, Benson's running a corner route on a smash concept with Kyler Casper holding the flat defender underneath. And Moore, he's booting out to his right on the move and just hits it on the money to Benson, 25+ yards downfield, just fitting it into a window, right over a DB, right down on the sideline. Was really impressed by his ability to, just operate when the offense wasn't on schedule because it was behind at times in this game, having to pick up some of those 3rd and longs, and he did a really good job there, being able to read out defenses. And I feel like at this point, he looks more comfortable in this offense than Dylan Gabriel did a year ago, despite Gabriel's experience on the field. Gabriel, they had to set up a lot of stuff for him because he was, just trying to get integrated into this offense as quickly as he could coming over from Oklahoma in the offseason. But they trust Dante to sit back there and make reads, and he's been able to do that, and he's looked comfortable doing it so far this season.
I know this sounds kind of silly, but he just feels like a guy who just never makes the wrong decision. We saw in this game his ability to judge really well whether to throw on the run or whether to just tuck it and get a couple yards. Even the interception, Dan Lanning was saying, hey, I really felt like that was the right decision for him to make, to throw that, and part of it was the weather, some of it was just how it turned out, but I liked the choice to throw it there. he's shown really good judgment. I think that's the biggest thing that we've learned from these first 3 games, because that's something that was the big concern coming into the season, that he hadn't matured. But we had said that he had, and that he learned a lot from Dylan, both in what to do and what not to do, and it just feels like he's making all the right decisions, man. This is exactly what Oregon was hoping for with him.
Yeah, like you said, the decision making, it's really impressed me. He knows when to take it and just scramble for his yards. The interception came on a play where it's like it's second and short. He's up big in the third quarter. I'm fine with him taking a shot at that point in the game. He's thrown against the wind, probably a throw he shouldn't have made, but overall it's not a decision that hurts the team. And that's what Dan is looking for from his quarterbacks: operate the offense and don't hurt the team with turnovers. So Dante has done everything that he could have asked for and more so far.
Yeah, and I'm gonna jump kind of on the same train for my second exclamation point. Is just that this is not going to be a one receiver offense. Just watching football this weekend, you see some teams that just really only operate through one receiver that the quarterback has a good connection with, and that's just not the case in this offense. He's already got the connection with Malik Benson that we've talked about, but he trusted Corian more implicitly on those scramble drills. He trusts guys like Kyler Casper to go up on a goal line fade. And get that he understands what all of these guys are good at. And this just is not going to be an offense that can only go to one guy in crunch time.
We've seen him spread out the ball pretty well through these first couple weeks of the season. I thought like Kenyon Sadiq could be that top target guy in this offense, and he hasn't really been yet because they haven't really tried to script up that much for Sadiq. But Malik Benson's been, I think, the leading receiver so far. But Corian Moore continues to get a lot of targets, and like you said, just spreading it around. And having a lot of weapons that can attack you, and then you can't load up onto Corian Moore because what if Malik Benson does take the top off and go hit you for a deep shot? So it just opens things up throughout the offense.
Yeah, it's just really valuable. And something that maybe we didn't expect coming into the season just because there were so many questions in the receiver room. With Evan Stewart going down, with DeCorian Moore is going to be good, but he's a true freshman. How long will he take to integrate? It seems like all the answers are yes, it's going to be fine, and we trust him. Even Kyler Casper coming back off a year he spent mostly out with injury. Like it just all feels like it's working out for the Ducks. It's kind of crazy.
Yeah, there was we knew about the talent in this receiver room heading into the season. We knew there were guys that could be good. It was just like you said, it was question marks, it was unknown because we hadn't seen it and we didn't know how these guys would shake out into different roles. And we've been able to see that earlier this season, but there are roles where it is still a lot of movement throughout the offense, and guys, they're using everybody just about up and down this receiver room out of whatever there's 6 to 7, whoever it is, main options at that position.
Yeah. All right, where are we going with the next one?
All right, for me, second thing that had me excited from that Northwestern game was just how much havoc the linebackers were really able to create for this Oregon defense. Bryce Betcher had a pick in that game. Jerry Mixon, second straight game with a pick for him. Bryce Betcher was also all over the field in terms of he had a pass breakup, making plays in the run game. The two of them combined they had 10 tackles together, and 5 of them were stops for PFF. So like tackles within 1 to 2 yards of the line of scrimmage, stops on these run plays.
That's Big Ten Player of the Week Big Ten Defensive Player of the Week, Jerry Mixon, to you, by the way.
Exactly. I've just been really impressed by, Betcher he was a stud for this defense last year and was expected to be, a captain, a leader, one of the difference makers for this defense this year. But Mixon's been a guy who's really surprised me and really stepped up to, Devin Jackson's gotten the start these last few weeks for the Ducks. Jerry Mixon started in week 1, but Mixon has stood out to me as the better linebacker. He looks really smooth out there in coverage, and I think that Dan Lanning said that I think it was Mixon said that Lanning has called these guys sticks and picks throughout practice, throughout the offseason and the lead up to the stuff. Betcher is sticks because he comes to hit people, and Mixon is picks because and it's what his teammates have talked about too. Him moving around almost like a defensive back out there at linebacker. He just has really good instincts in coverage.
It's his ability to bait, right?
Exactly.
I think Lennon talked about it. It just he makes you think that he's not going to get it, especially in practice. And then he'll go and get it, and we've seen it this last.
Exactly. He sits on those routes knowing that he can get to them, but knowing that make the quarterback think it's open, and then once the quarterback moves, he reacts really quickly and can jump on those. He was really impressive, and I've just been overall really impressed by the two of them. I think Mixon will take over this starting job from Devin Jackson. Jackson, a guy who we know is talented in this team, in this program, had a pretty solid season as the number 3 linebacker this year, but I think he's going to fall back into that number 3 role. I think we'll continue to see Mixon get more and more of these snaps at linebacker because for Jackson, a guy that's as fast as he is, he just seems really hesitant to react to everything out there. Like he's slow to get to downhill to come make these tackles, slow in coverage just to move around, and he's like not physically slow, but we know the level of athlete he is, one of the fastest like pound for pound players on this team, but he just like doesn't jump to. You can see it on the stat sheet. He makes one tackle out there on Saturday. He also a missed tackle, had one in the first game of the season, but that he's only making one tackle when Jerry Mixon's making 5, even though these guys are playing the same amount of snaps, because he's quicker to the ball because Mixon's quicker to the ball every single time, despite Jackson being a physically a faster athlete than Mixon is. I would like to see Jackson kind of find that in himself. He might just not be the level of processor out there that Mixon and Betcher have seemed to be this season, but I'd like to think that Jackson can get there and unlock that athleticism, because Mixon, he came out with that Oklahoma State game with a ridiculous like 96 PFF grade or something, but I was like, oh, that's got to be some, PFF game to game. It can get, the variance can be wide, but he looked apart again against Northwestern. He's a really good linebacker, and I'm excited to see what he does for this team this year.
Yeah, and Dan Lanning is kind of a linebackers coach. He knows what he's talking about. That this feels like a spot where he really gets hands on, and is willing to make changes, and trust his instincts. And I think you're right. I think we're going to see that change soon, and it's really going to benefit the Ducks. All
right, Owen, where are you still having question marks after week 3 of this season?
Yeah, I really felt like the defensive line wasn't a question mark before this game, but now I'm a little bit curious, because this wasn't just a Northwestern team like, hey, it's a Big Ten team, yeah, they can run the ball, it's what we expect. They develop offensive linemen well. They were missing their number 1 running back, Cam Porter, for this game. This was essentially the same thing as Oregon, where you're missing your RB1. You got to come in with the rest of the room and see what they can do, and they really succeeded. Like you said, the Northwestern outrushed the Ducks. In total yards, it felt like they could gash the Ducks a couple of times, which isn't something we've seen so far. So I want to know whether this will be an issue against Penn State, because Penn State's running game is one of the best things it's got going for it. They've got 2 phenomenal running backs, Nick Singleton, K'Jon Allen. And if they can do what Northwestern did to the Ducks, and have those guys who can operate at an All-American level, it's going to be an issue.
I haven't watched the film for the defense yet, but I'm planning on getting into it this week, especially with what was going on the D line, because like you said, they just weren't getting and I'll say the same thing for the O line on my question mark. Yeah. They just weren't getting the push up front that you expect from this team. Guys like Tion Gray were just kind of getting moved off the ball a little bit more than
which we didn't see these first 2 weeks. That's why it was so surprising.
Exactly, and that's what you get. Being able to hold the line of scrimmage where it is, or even be able to push it back a yard, that's what helps create these alleys for these linebackers to come down. If you can eat a double team and that guy can't climb to the second level, that's what allows Jerry Mixon to come through and make that hit and keep that gain to a short gain. So we just got to see more from the defensive line, and I'll get into what my question mark was as well, because that was the offensive line. I have watched the film from the offense, and I was just not in love with what I saw from the offensive line in the run game. There were plays where guys like Alex Harkey, who has been a dog early on this season, just getting pushed back off the ball at the line of scrimmage. I was not very impressed by what Dave Iuli did as a run blocker in this game after he had been really solid in those first few. I will have more stuff coming later on this week on just what was going on in the trenches for the Ducks against Northwestern, because the Oregon should not be losing, just the overall ground battle to a team like Northwestern when you're as talented as Oregon is. So, but yeah, I don't know. This offensive line just was not completely locked in against a team in Northwestern that is not as talented on the front as Oregon is, and they should have been able to get more of a push for these guys to find room to be able to work with, because the running backs, it was like less than a yard before contact that these running backs were averaging on Saturday for Oregon. Just weren't, or Northwestern was able to get onto them early at near the line of scrimmage and then force them to fight for even to get those couple yards that they were.
Yeah, and it felt like you a lot of the time you say you got to establish the run so you can throw the ball. This was a game where Oregon could kind of throw the ball despite not establishing the run, just on pure skill. Oregon's a better team than Northwestern, and its receivers can go beat their DBs, even if they understand that the pass is coming. They don't have to respect the run as much. But like we said, that's not going to happen when you play top end Big Ten teams like the Ducks are going to have to play later this year. This is more of a concern for the future, and for both these ones a surprise because they had been so good. Both our expectations in preseason and then kind of where they landed in these first couple weeks.
Yeah, we know this team can be very talented in the trenches. We know they are very talented in the trenches, honestly. We saw it in this first couple of weeks. We just got to see more consistency from them because you can't, there are even times where it was like you had two guys blocking the same guy on the offensive line. And it's like if you get one guy who picks up that extra linebacker, the linebacker that eventually makes the hit, all of a sudden Jordan Davison's springing that run or Jaden Lamar's springing that run to get into that second level. So some things to clean up on that offensive line, on that defensive line. And I'm looking forward to getting into this defensive film this week because I'm curious to see what was going on that defensive line in terms of just not creating, the pushback they should be getting from guys like Amari Washington. Amari Washington is so strong and so fast, but can he play with that strength instead of just using that speed to, be a difference maker on the inside?